Hey polar bears. Hey, so this week in science, we are going to be talking about plants and how plants are able to survive in all of these different environments. I thought we live in the beautiful Chihuahuan desert, so what better way to talk about plant adaptations than the way that our gorgeous Chihuahuan desert plants are able to survive in this harsh desert environment. We know a desert is dry, it's hot, we don't get that much rain, but we get a lot of sun. So how are we able to survive in this environment? Well, we have a variety of plants in this Chihuahuan desert, and I want to show you some of my favorites. We're going to start off here with this plant that's called a palo verde, and in English it's called a palo verde. And you guys know what palo verde means. It means green tree. And this is one of the adaptations that this plant has in order to survive in the Chihuahuan desert in a hot, dry environment. Well, it has this green bark, and the function of this green bark is that it does not need to have leaves in order to photosynthesize. In order for the process of photosynthesis to occur, we know plants do that through their leaves, but the palo verde has a special little trick up its sleeve. It can photosynthesize through its green bark. So even without the leaves, this palo verde is creating glucose, energy for itself, in giving it the ability to grow. So why would a plant not want leaves? Well, because leaves need water, right? And so in the desert, it's not common to find plants with big leaves like you would find in the rainforest where they have plenty of water, because leaves take a lot of water for these plants, and we don't have a lot of water. But what we do have some leaves here, but you can see these leaves are really, really small. That's another adaptation. So the structure here of a palo verde is its green bark and then small leaves. And so small leaves do not take that much water in order to survive, right? So this is an amazing adaptation. And this is one of my favorite plants from the Chihuahuan desert. It's called the palo verde. Let's go look at some other plants. All right, so here's another plant. This is called a red yucca. You all maybe recognize this red yucca. It's named from the red flower, and it's very common in our Chihuahuan desert. It's very common for people's landscapes because it's a beautiful plant and it's really easy to grow. So if you notice, all of these spines are growing straight up. What is the function of that? Why would these spines be growing straight up out of the ground? Well, because if I'm growing straight up like this, when the sun is above and pelting me in the middle of the hottest days of the summer, these leaves are not getting that much sunlight. So let's take a look here. I made a leaf. And so if I'm laying flat like this and the sun is hitting me, this leaf is getting burned and it's burning off lots of water, and this leaf is gonna dry and crumble up. But if I'm going straight up and down like this, when the sun is hitting me, the sun is only hitting the very tip of this leaf. And so this leaf does not require, it is not getting burned by the sun. So this is called a red yucca, and that is the function of these spines growing straight up like this. So let's look at one of my most common and another one of my favorite plants in the Chihuahuan desert. All right, here's another really common and another really beautiful plant in our Chihuahuan desert. It's called a prickly pear. In Spanish, it's called a nopal. And yes, you can eat these. I'm not sure if you can eat this particular species. I don't see why not. But this is another very common plant in the Chihuahuan desert. So if you see this, there's no leaves on here. This is an amazing adaptation to survive in our desert. This plant has no leaves, and it doesn't grow leaves, and its leaves have changed into little spines, and those spines serve a few different functions. What do they do? Well, if I was an animal and and I was looking for a nice, juicy meal, I would think twice before putting my mouth onto this thing. I'd probably leave with a lot of aches in my mouth. And another thing is these spines, their function is to give it a little bit of shade from that sun. It doesn't look like that much, but remember, every little bit helps in this hot, dry environment. Another function that we have here is there is water stored inside of these pads. And so when it rains, the roots from the nopal, or the prickly pear, suck up as much water as they can, and they store it inside of the pads here. And so in times of long drought, they're kind of like the camel's back stores its energy. Well, in times of drought, the nopal, or the prickly pear, stores its energy inside of its pads, and it can slowly use up that water. So in the rainy season, these things get nice and fat, and then in the dry season, they slowly get thinner and thinner, but they survive. All right, so I just remembered I got this plant, and I thought, oh, this is a perfect one to show you an adaptation for these leaves that we've already seen in the red yucca, but it's not only for spiny plants, it's also for leafy plants. Which direction are all of these leaves growing? They're growing straight up. Again, you can see if I'm the sun up here shining down on these leaves, the points of those leaves are all up. No leaf is flat, and no leaf in the middle of the day when it is the hottest, no leaf is getting sunburned. So again, here's my example. If I'm flat like this and the sun is hitting me, that sun is absorbing, just sucking all the energy and all the water out of me. But if I'm like this, like all of these leaves here growing straight up, then very little of my most tender area is exposed to that hot sun. That allows this plant to survive in the desert. That is an amazing adaptation. And not only that, if you look at these leaves, if you were able to touch these leaves, you can see that they've got a little bit of fur on them. They're kind of fuzzy. And that's another way that they are just getting a little bit of extra shade from that sun. All right, one last plant now, I promise. All right, so here's our last plant. Really common looking cactus that we have here in the Chihuahuan Desert, and a common adaptation amongst cactus. So he's got spines. No one's gonna try to eat him. He's getting a little bit of extra shade. He doesn't have to produce leaves. Remember, leaves require water, but look at the structure that we have here. It's ribbed. So if you look at this plant from straight above, you can see how it has ribs here. So what's the function of these ribs? Well, let's think about it. Here I made a little example here of a ribbed plant. And so in times of rain, and we get rain here in the desert, it just all tends to come at once, and then it's gone and we won't get rain for 3 or 4 months. But so when we get rain, this thing fills up with water. It fills up with water like this, and those ribs, they almost disappear because it's able to expand. Notice, it's not taking, I don't have to grow it all. I'm just using the structure that I already have, and I'm able to expand and fill up with water. And then during those long periods of drought, I'm gonna slowly use up that water, and I'm going to allow myself to survive. I'm gonna get skinny, but I'm gonna stay alive. So I'm gonna be able to use all that water that I store inside of me to get through long periods of drought. So these are ribs on this gorgeous cactus, and those ribs get bigger and fill up with water. And then in times of drought and long periods of time without water here in the desert, that I'm able to use that water to keep me alive. What an amazing adaptation. The desert is full of beautiful plants, and they all have their own special way of surviving in this hot, dry hot, dry environment. They all have their own structures here that allow them to thrive.